Heyo, you're listening to Edge Coach Quip, featuring our very own Edge coaches and community, dropping knowledge nuggets to fuel your day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Coach Quip. I am Coach Chris.
I'm Coach Robyn, and
I'm Coach Dan.
Special guest, Coach Dan from Dare to Try. And today we are talking about volunteering and the benefits of volunteering, why it's awesome, and why you should volunteer as well.
it's National Volunteer Month.
It's National Volunteer Month, and we are grateful. So volunteers are essential for every athletic event that I've ever been to and been a part of. It has been run by volunteers, essentially. So our major marathons, our triathlons, those events happen because of the generosity of people either who love sports or who are also participating in sports and just want to give back to their community. So we are grateful, and I've had some really great volunteer experiences, and I've had volunteers who have provided me great experiences while I've been racing. So that's what we're going to talk about here today.
And maybe more importantly than that, volunteering just feels good. Like, it feels good to be able to give back to the sports that you love, especially if you have loved ones that also do it along with you. I don't know. I loved, being at a water stop and encouraging other athletes, especially if it's an event that's kind of near and dear to your heart. You know firsthand what it's like, and you know what you're going to be looking for.
Yeah, as somebody who works a lot with volunteers, Dan, what has been your experience working with volunteers?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's that community, right? It's just a group of people coming together for a common cause and supporting individuals out there in many different ways, whether it's a water station, for us working with para athletes, it could be, helping an athlete get across the finish line. So I know we'll talk a little bit about how essential they are. But yeah, for us, it's just building a community, almost like within a community of, those that are there just to help and support athletes along the way.
Yeah, volunteering is a great way to feel more connected to your local community, to immerse yourself in a different community. So if you travel somewhere and volunteer, and there are a lot of other benefits of volunteering as well that we'll talk about in the bonus mile.
I think one of the biggest things that we hear from people who haven't volunteered yet or who've recently volunteered, though, is that they just don't really know how to get started. And they don't know, which race to go to, how to sign up, what types of volunteer opportunities there are. So they don't know the when, the why, and the how. So that's why we have you here.
Yeah, for us, for Dare to Try, pretty easy to get involved. You can check out our website. We have, whether it's weekly practices or our large weekend camps in the summer. I think it's just going on, seeing what you might be interested, checking out what volunteer opportunities there are. And you don't have to be, you don't necessarily have to be a triathlete or a runner. I mean, we've got roles for every type of individual out there, in many ways to support those events. So yeah, I think it's just going on, pretty easy to sign up, and join the community.
I love the newsletter too. I feel like I always know what's coming up there to try, because you all are on it with newsletters.
Yeah.
Goals.
Yeah, so that's a great tip. Go to the website, and then it can be website of an organization like Dare to Try. It can be the website of a race that is about to happen, or that you have friends participating in. That's a great way to see your family and friends participate in their races and give back to the community. You can find those opportunities online through newsletters, through your friends, and just sign up. Look at the different opportunities that they have. Like Dan said, you don't necessarily have to be an athlete to be a part of a race volunteer crew. You don't have to be a particular speed of athlete to volunteer with other organizations like Dare to Try or with a race. So look for the opportunities that are out there, sign up, and get your volunteering on.
And if you do volunteer, chances are you might be inspired. I don't know if you know that that's how Edge started. It's through one volunteer.
So I can tell this story before we go into the bonus. How did Edge start through volunteering?
We had thought it would be cool to go see an Ironman. We didn't at the time. You needed to volunteer in order to get any type of spot, but really to understand what the race was about. We didn't have people that were racing that distance, and I somehow got us signed up for Wetsuit Stripper. which is a very, very, very coveted position. But you don't have a call time until like 30 minutes into the race. So we watched the start. Brian and I remember we were standing and watched the start. And I had no interest in doing something that long. And I remember seeing it still the mass starts were happening. And I heard the voice in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do that. And I didn't say it out loud, but I looked at Brian and I'm like, can I be thinking that? And I waited, a solid 2 weeks after and brought it up. And we had both had the same thing, had the same thought. And then while I was volunteering, the woman I was paired with was doing Arizona, which is what we ended up going to volunteer at to sign up for the next year. So, and that whole experience snowballed into this. So thanks, volunteering.
Yeah, that is awesome. So if you want to hear more about the benefits of volunteering, how you can get involved, and what a wetsuit stripper is, bonus miles. Bonus miles.
Bonus miles coming up.
All right, welcome back for our bonus miles. First, let's answer the question: what is a wetsuit stripper, Robyn?
It's a really important job. Did it have them at half? So I always forget.
Sometimes, yeah.
Some races have them.
So half and full, always fulls will have someone who is volunteering and they help you take your wetsuit off. So after being in the water for 1 to 2 miles, you can be pretty tie. They'll meet you at the swim exit. It's always helpful to have it kind of halfway pulled down, and then they usually get you on the ground and just whip it off of your feet so that you don't have to like struggle with this basically giant stretchy thing. They're lovely people. We see some amazing things as wetsuit strippers, and it's a really fun, high energy spot to get because you're getting to see them finish what is the first leg of their dream. So it's awesome. But anything volunteering wise at Ironman is awesome. So
yeah,
do it.
Yeah, that's a great, it sounds like a very fulfilling experience for you to see the people, starting on their journey of fulfilling their dream. But also as an athlete, I know I was so extremely grateful for those volunteers because the wetsuit stripper sounds very funny, but pro tip, hold on to whatever bottoms you have while the people are whipping. It's essentially, I think of it, it is pulling the tablecloth out and leaving all of the dishes on the table, essentially, but with your wetsuit, right? But the time that it saved and the energy that it saved and how fun it was actually to have that happen after you're on feel like a pro, and just grateful that it saved me the 5 minutes of wrestling out of my own suit.
No one enjoys putting it on or taking it off by yourself, but you can get some help.
Yeah,
it's always a good thing.
Yeah, and those are the things that volunteers do, right? So volunteers at our races are thinking about the things that we aren't necessarily thinking about while we're racing, and doing those little things that make our experience easier and more enjoyable.
Absolutely. I love it when people are kind of made to volunteer. That's one of my secret sauces is doing a race where you have to have a certain number of hours of trail time, rehabbing trails or volunteering at another race. Or for me, many moons ago, got involved with Ironman. You had to volunteer the year before really to get a spot. You got first dibs right after the current racers. And then after that, sometimes the entire event was full. This is before, many races existed. But that is just a surefire way to make sure that we're continuing to give back as we, take and reap a lot from our sports.
Yeah, so early registration or early access to events is definitely a benefit. I've had free entry to some events. So I know there are smaller races in New York City that if you volunteer a certain number of times, you get to do it. I was a volunteer captain for the New York City Triathlon and got free entry every year.
Discounts.
Yep,
T-shirts.
Yep.
All the swag that comes with volunteering. Yeah.
Marathon always gives out special gear
Yeah.
to their course volunteers.
Yeah.
And then it becomes this thing that, it's like really
Coveted.
aspirational and coveted.
Yeah.
Which is super smart.
Yes, and think about how many volunteer spots there are at something like the Chicago Marathon, right? You have 26.2 miles of road. You have an aid station about every mile, right? And each of those are stationed by volunteers, and a lot of volunteers because those tables stretch pretty long, and it's multiple shifts usually. But you also have the expo the day before or the weekend before your race, where you have multiple volunteers. I volunteered at the Chicago Marathon Expo last year. with sustainability, but there were people at every booth, at entry, at checkpoints of, checking people in. So many volunteers helped to make these things run. So let's talk about how we get involved in volunteering. We talked a little bit about going to your website, but how do people dip their toes into volunteering for an organization like Dare to Try? And actually, before you even say that, tell people what Dare to Try is in case they don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Dare to Try is a local nonprofit that we have here in Chicago, and we started in 2010. There's 3 friends that were triathletes that wanted to get, triathlon, basically to have more adaptive athletes involved in triathlon. So we added it to our roster of different sports we coached, and yeah, so it was pretty much born there, and we serve individuals that have physical disabilities or visual impairments, so those with spinal cord injuries, amputees, and then offer resources such as adaptive equipment, training opportunities, camps, help with getting into races that we have here locally, whether that's like offering scholarships to cover those sometimes expensive costs just to get in. But we're always looking, we're a small team, we're always, there's only 6 of us, so we need volunteers in order to function. We wouldn't be where we are at today without our volunteers.
Yeah. So how do you open up volunteer opportunities?
Yeah. So we, like I said earlier, we have weekly practices, and so that's swimming, biking, or running, and we open that up. We want to be an inclusive organization, inclusive of community. So we like it when individuals just come to volunteer or just be a part of our weekly practices, and from there we can go into instruction on maybe how to guide someone in the pool who's visually impaired, or working with someone that has spinal cord injury or an amputation on just different ways to adapt to swim or bike and run. So I think that's probably the best way to start, is just come, even observe if you want. And then if you're interested in riding a tandem bike or swimming in the lake tethered to somebody, that would be like the next step of progression.
I love guides. Oh boy. If you hear snoring, it's because we've got some bugs next to us over here. I personally love guides. I guess I didn't realize that you kind of leveled up to that. It would certainly make sense, because it certainly seems like a skill that you would need to learn and then learn more about. I've personally guided only on runs, so the least technical, and even that, wow, like so fulfilling, but at the same time, so I was never more mentally exhausted than after that, because you're
responsible for
having to think about where to put, for contact points on the ground at all times, and having to also make vocal cues, while you're in flight running. So it's bow down. You can teach people that.
I mean, another opportunity too, we talked about the marathon and volunteering there, and probably one of my favorite volunteer experiences is working with the athletes with disability division at the Chicago Marathon. And so it's pretty cool, because you're right at the start line, all the elite able-bodied athletes, elite wheelchair athletes. So you get to see that. Normally you don't get to see that, even as a runner. So you're up at the front line when the gun goes off, and everyone takes off, and you get to see them warm up beforehand, which is really cool. But then after they take off, you help bring all their equipment, whether prosthetic legs, their everyday wheelchairs. Then you go over the finish line, and so then you're there to see everyone cross. You see the first female able-bodied runners, wheelchair racers, and so you get to see it. Very emotional. Like you see even just the age groupers coming in, and a lot of tears. Up too. Not so cool, but
Potato.
That's funny. I think my favorite experience was at the start line, not at the finish line. The finish line has the vomit, the start line has the excitement. And even though it has an earlier wake up time, I definitely liked that experience a little better than the aftermath.
But I think that's good to think about when you're considering volunteering. Where do you want to be? Do you want to be in the trenches on the course, like troubleshooting? I know that one of our coaches, is on a medical team, and she's literally like floating around the course. God only knows what she is seeing. Versus the excitement of the start line, versus being able to help at the finish and catch people, because maybe you really want to see more people too. think about where you want to be, especially on those long races, because you do have a choice, right? You have a choice on what type of experience you want to have.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about volunteering locally for me has been seeing people race that I didn't know were racing, or athletes from Edge who were racing, and seeing them when they did not expect to see me. So last summer, I volunteered at the Chicago Triathlon in transition. And so I got to see them, beginning and then between the swim and the bike, between the bike and the run. And it was really awesome to have those moments of encouragement with athletes as they're going through, I know as a racer, that just gives you a boost when you see someone that you know. And when somebody says good job or keep going, like you internalize all of that. So that I think was a really great volunteer experience for me locally, to be able to just see those random people and know that it means a lot to them when you do give them that.
You can see it.
Yep.
They light
Extra
up.
boost. Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned a favorite volunteering experience. Do you have any other favorite volunteering experiences?
Yeah, I think, you had mentioned Ironman and having to volunteer in order to get into the next year's race. And I think doing that, I was at an aid station right out of their second transition. So they're coming from the bike to the run. And I was just at, like, this was Ironman, Wisconsin. So you're sitting up on the parking lot deck where all the bikes are. And yeah, and they're kind of fresh off the bike. They're ready to start the run. So you're just handing out water or gels and things like that. And you see, like, definitely happy to get off the bike, after finishing 112 miles. And then, they're still excited. I think they're excited to have finished that part of the race. And yeah, and then, they've got some, pep in their step starting that marathon. And so to be able to, be there for that moment, give them what they need. And then when your shift's over, you can go out and then see some of, and it's definitely a different athlete you see, but just be able to go out there and then cheer for them and to help them, like you said, just, to be out there, whether it's friends too, that don't expect you, like, to see you later on in the race, is a lot, that's good mojo that you're giving them to help them, get to that finish line. So yeah, that was a fun experience.
Yeah. What about you?
Wetsuit tripping is always going to be hard to top. We've even done much smaller races though, of like holding down a water station at like a 5K, that's for MS, which is very near and dear to our heart because one of our best friends was diagnosed in his early 30s. Just seeing the families come out and being able to, pat them on the back. And most of them were walking or running slowly. They had very little to do with the competition itself, but it had a lot more to do with like that shared purpose. It's awesome to see. And it does not take a ton of effort or time.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I think that's also awesome about Edge cheer zones, right? Like whether it's doing a full water station or just being on the course to encourage people, that community aspect is so special. Yeah. I think I've had so many great volunteering experiences. I've also had some bad ones. And I think that when I think back about what those bad ones were, it was that those were the situations where I wasn't interacting with the athletes. And so I really like the volunteer experiences where I get to see the athletes and I get to encourage the athletes directly. I don't mind setting up chairs and like moving tables and stanchions and things like that, but I really love those experiences where I get to feed off of that energy, because you mentioned earlier that it's inspiring, right? So like when you're there and you see that, that's like, maybe I will do the triple challenge this year. The triple challenge is a ridiculous Chicago triathlon race where you do the sprint, the Olympic, and international all together, or
it's super sprint on Saturday and then sprint and Olympic on Sunday.
There you go. Yeah. Yes, that's right. So 3 different races in the weekend. That's ridiculous. I don't need to do that, but it was inspiring to watch other people do it, and it was a lot of fun. And that's the sort of motivation. Like sometimes when I feel like I'm in my own training rut, I go and volunteer at a race because it's just so amazing to see the energy, to see people accomplishing their dreams, to see people hitting PRs and their goals. So that's what I love about volunteering.
It's a great point. If you are training for something bigger and you're about to head into your peak, maybe it's your final cutback week before your final build, which we know you're mentally going to be like by the end, go volunteer for a couple hours, get that lift, remind yourself of why you're doing the sport that you're doing, and it will help you get through the peak miles. It's Connection is the stuff that matters, people.
Yeah.
I think you make a great point too about, there are goals of like setting up for the races, right? And maybe you're not a person that you want to volunteer, but maybe you don't want to be around big crowds or that, but you want to give, and maybe you're the type of person that likes setting up chairs, which sometimes it's kind of nice. And that, those things are needed in order to execute a race and provide safety and things like that. And so, I think you always end up feeling really good after doing, even if it's a, very menial task, like putting up chairs, but I think it's just good to know that there's rules
Something
for
for
everybody.
everybody.
Yep. And especially one thing that's always helped me as an athlete racing is to thank the volunteers as I'm going through, because I find that I even get a boost in my own energy by saying thank you to the people who are working water stations. So that's also a great thing for athletes to do. Even if you aren't going to volunteer, thank your volunteers, because none of the events that you'd be doing would be happening without them.
Yeah.
Or they'd be so expensive.
Yes.
Because you have to pay people to do it that you could not afford to do it.
I think it's Muncie 70.3 where they give all the athletes bracelets, like thank you bracelets. So you can wear them during the race. And then like when you're on the run or somewhere and you want to give them out to a particular volunteer or whatever, and then you're on the running course and you see like a volunteer, it's like with like wristbands, which is pretty cool. I think it's an awesome way to give back while you're in the race, like thanking individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Collecting those sweaty wristbands.
Salty bracelets.
Well, as we wrap up here, Dan, you have Dare to Try has an event at the end of this month. Do you want to talk about what that is?
Yeah, the last Sunday of this month, we have our start the season event. It's at On Tour Brewing. And so, we host this event every year. We start off with a fun 5K run just around that neighborhood, run, walk, wheel, whatever you're interested in. And it's mostly we call it a friend raiser. So just a way to kick off the season and just bring the community together. There's going to be live music, food, drinks. We'll have some just some vendors set up, and just a good way to bring everyone together and celebrate our volunteers and individuals in the community.
Where do people learn about that one?
Yeah, so you can go on our website. Tickets are still being sold. I think we're at like 60 or 70% of our fundraising goal too for that. But check out our website. I think it's on the main landing page. It's at www.dare2try.org. Dare2try.org. You can buy tickets there, or if you just want to make a donation. Really appreciate it.
Do you need volunteers?
That's a great question. That's a Shauna question. I think we need volunteers, but I think we're okay on that. We just want we want to celebrate our volunteers there, so it's a pretty easy setup for that one. But it's a good question.
And where can people follow you outside the website? You and Dare to Try.
Outside of the website, we're on Instagram and Facebook. So hashtag at Dare to Try _. Somebody has Dare to Try, so Dare to Try _ for Instagram. I'm at DanTun24 on Instagram, or just come over to Edge.
You'll find him here.
Excellent. Well, thank you to all the volunteers out there. Happy Volunteer Month. And that is Coach Quip. I'm Coach Chris.
I'm Coach Robyn. Tag us in your volunteer opportunities.
And I'm Coach Dan.
See you next time.
Later.
Thanks for listening to Coach Quip. Original music performed by Mend. Follow us online on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Edge Athlete Lounge. Our podcast lives in the blog section of our website. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and you can check out the show notes for additional ways to contact us. Ready, set, onward we go.